What's up, everyone? Welcome to the No. I am Tyler DeLuca, joined by Greer, and our very special guest today, Ice Young, freelance with pretty much any major network you can think of. Ice, it's hard to keep up with you these days. You be working, so give us the rundown. What's conference tournament week looking like for you?
Yeah, first of all, what's up, guys? Thanks so much for having me. Big fan of the work that you guys put out. The No Cap. I love getting the emails and just like, oh, I get my download on Women's Basketball for the day. So I appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, busy month for me right now. I am in Richmond, Virginia. I have the A10 Women's Basketball Tournament. So yesterday was the first round. Today is round 2. So we've got 2 games. And then I'll finish that out all the way to the semifinals on CBS. I think that happens on Saturday. And then I'll go home for a quick second, literally like 12 hours. And the next day I fly to South Dakota. And I have the Summit League semifinals and championship there. And then after that, I go to Alabama and I have Conference USA championship.
Oh,
yeah. So you can bring me back for these other conferences. We can talk.
We would love to have you back. I know this is about to be a great episode. So today, obviously, as well, you do some socials for the Big East. And that is what we're going to be diving into today. The Big East Conference tournament is on deck. We got the bracket here. Ice, I just kind of off rip any type of big picture ideas, any thoughts that come to this about any of these matchups that stick out to you?
Yeah, for sure. Really just starting with, the first round, I think Georgetown had a really good season. Despite what they went through with losing their head coach and Tasha Butts, the way that, Darnell Haney has stepped up for this team, for them to get a 6 seed this year, I think that was huge. I think they've just been very solid. They've weathered multiple storms on the court, off the court. So for them to get a 6 seed was clutch. I also think that if they can get past Xavier, that matchup with St. John's will be very good. The 3 and 6 seed, and Georgetown, one of the best defensive teams in the Big East. And so, keep a watch for them. Seton Hall, DePaul. This is a matchup that we've seen tons of times, like Tony DeBozzella and Doug Bruno going at it. I would give Seton Hall the nod. I just think they have the depth. And I think DePaul just has such a tough year, just managing, expectations, a ton of new players, like they're experienced, but it's experienced transfers who didn't play where they were previously. And so I think they've just been trying to find that consistency pretty much all season. And then that 8-9 game Butler Providence, that is a toss up. Like I am a huge Aaron Bath Providence fan. I'm a huge Olivia Olson fan. Like I think she's so good in the post, but at the same time, like Butler has had a very good February. And they won a ton of games. They went on a 4-game win streak. They beat Villanova, which was a key win for them. And so I think that 8-9 game, like it normally is in tournament time, is a toss-up. And then I would say the game that I'm looking forward to watching, despite whoever wins in which way, honestly, is Villanova-Marquette. Like, I just think that 4-5 game, especially with Villanova and how they won the regular season, I had the call for that FS1 game. Lucy Olson buzzer beater. She dropped 31. And it was a game that DePaul should have won. Like, I hate saying that, but it was like they should have won. Like, they did
they led it the entire way. And so
everything
that's just the truth. That's just the matter of fact here. They had that.
Yeah, they did everything right. But I think that Villanova-Marquette matchup, and Greer, I'd love to get your thoughts on that. Just matchups are everything this time of year. But these two teams are so evenly matched, I feel like. It's so interesting.
Yeah, I think Marquette, obviously, first of all, like the coaching matchup, right? Denise Dillon and Megan Duffy, like two of the best coaches in the country, period. Prepared for the moment. So like schematically, I'm just very intrigued with what the coaches are going to ask of their teams to execute. And then you talk about the players. You talk about Villanova, and who's led by Lucy Olson, who led the Big East this year in scoring, just a dynamic scorer, right? And then you think about Marquette and the depth that they have, right? Liza Carlin. You think about Jordan King, like they have 2 players who could also go off for 20 plus points in any game. So, and then, the conference player of the year, conference awards just came out, and Christina Dalsey, who is the post player for Villanova, is co-defensive player of the year. So very much looking forward to that matchup with Carlin in the post. And if I had to choose somebody coming, I think I'm going to go with the girls out of Milwaukee. I think that they might get it done, just a little bit more balanced. But Villanova is definitely not a team to sneeze at.
Yeah, no, not at all. I'm intrigued for you guys. Talking stocks here. If you were to pick a team that is stocks up right now, just trending in the right direction, and a team that is not is going down, what would be the teams that kind of stick out to y'all?
I feel like DePaul calmed down. That loss to Villanova during the end of the regular season, that had to be deflating.
Well,
I mean, you're already the 10 seed, you know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? And but that was just, that's a team that kind of just breaks. That's a loss that kind of just breaks a team spirit.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, especially too, like knowing the year Anaya Peoples has had. I think she finished. Let me look on my selections, but I would hope that she would have finished on an All Big East team. And she just led them in every statistical category
Yeah.
possible. Guys, like I mean,
Mhm.
points, rebounds, assists, offensive rebounds, steals.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
she led them in every single thing, and so I think it was just tough seeing that game and then seeing, just all of her hard work and like her just honestly fight. She just is a player that had a ton of fight. But I agree with you. I think DePaul has been just kind of the saddest story this season of just, again, teams like that lost games so close. They lost multiple games by 5 points, 6 points, like 6 or 7 of these games throughout the season, that if they had turned it around 1 or 2 possessions would have been, a really good wins for them. I think the team that is trending upwards, besides the team that's undefeated in this league, honestly, is Creighton. Yeah, honestly, it's Creighton. I think Creighton is so good. They're 3-headed monster and Lauren Jensen, Morgan Molly, and Morancic. Those 3 on any given night can seriously score 70 points for you. And I'm not like, that's not an exaggeration.
Mhm.
That's like a day in which they shoot the ball half decent. Those
Mhm.
3 can combine for 70 points. And so I think that in terms of just their experience, all of them being seniors, this is the Creighton team that 2 years ago was in the Elite 8. And so they know how to win this time of year. So I feel like in terms of teams that are trending upwards, they just haven't lost in a very long time either. And so the only team that they lost to this season twice in the Big East play is UConn. And I could see in a different matchup with different situations and maybe exploring some of those freshmen, like things going a different way, to be honest. But I like Creighton. I like the way that they play.
Yeah.
And it's a tough tournament matchup. Like no one wants to get Creighton on your schedule because you have to play perfect defense in order to beat them and then like near perfect offense. And that just does not happen normally in tournament time.
Yeah.
And they run their stuff. They are like experts.
They
do. Expert level.
Creighton going Creighton every time they step on the floor. Like Creighton going Creighton every single time. And I think y'all are right when it comes to just the difficulties in trying to stop that because they are so conditioned and system like in what they do. So if they get rolling with what they do, it can get a little spooky. So I mean, they're obviously the 2 seed, but I also feel like just schematically the biggest threat to UConn in this bracket, just off the strength of that, just how the seniority, the system, all of it. If they get rolling, it can get a little spooky. But I'm intrigued for y'all, for people that maybe haven't been as tapped into the Big East this year. Yes, you know the UConn players, but maybe you don't know the Creighton names, the St. John's names. For you guys, if someone's tapping in, hey, I'm going to watch Paige, I'm going to watch Aaliyah. What other players on other teams in this conference are like the must-see players that maybe fans that are tapping into the Big East really for the first time this season should get a look at? Ice, if you want to take the lead on that.
Oh, I love this. Okay, Greer, let's just go back and forth. We'll just go back and forth. I'm going to start with guard play first. Defensive player of the year, co-player of the year, and Kelsey Ransom. If you do not watch Kelsey Ransom play in the tournament, you have failed. We talk about like a real two-way player, someone that takes more pride on defense, and I think sometimes she does in scoring. And for Georgetown, she's everything. They go as she goes. I've been really impressed with just the way that she scored the basketball and the way that she's responded to the funk. I call it the funk. Like when we go through midseason, maybe you lost a couple of games, maybe you're exhausted, maybe midterms are here, who knows? And you're just not performing as well. And she went through a little bit of that funk, but then found her way out of it towards the end of the season in which they needed to. She's had double-figure scoring games. Just a really good two-way player that I think everyone like in the Big East needs to watch. She's also just a phenomenal person. Like she brings that energy, that light to the court as well.
Yeah. And then I'm going to look at that Seton Hall DePaul matchup. You talked about Peoples a lot, but I'm also going to say for Seton Hall, Azana Baines, great player. She's their star. A really do-it-all post player, like not afraid to get dirty and mix it up. And she's their star. And she's a really, really good college player.
Yeah. Finishing out the first round, I would say in that Butler-Providence matchup, I'm going with Providence guard Gracie Fosa. Gracie Fosa missed a bit of the season because of injury, came back, and then Providence went from being here to clearly here with her on their team. She's a veteran. She's experienced, so she just knows how to play the game at a high level. She knows how to get to her spots and score the basketball. And I just think if Providence is going to have any success against Butler, she has to score 20 plus in order for them to win. She has to be that dangerous at this time of the year for them. But she's a tremendous, like, dynamic guard. Really does a great job getting downhill.
And then looking ahead to the quarterfinal, I gotta say, Unique Drake for St. John's.
Oh yes,
An absolute bucket.
Yes,
absolute bucket. Scores at will. Whoever is taking on that defensive assignment, like, good luck to you. You know what I'm saying? You're gonna feel it. She's gonna make you feel her, and she is one of the best scorers in the Big East, hands down.
Yeah. I'm interested. I guess is more so a general question here as a former player. When you get into this time of year, you mentioned the funk there, and that's what kind of what prompted this. The grind of postseason play is no joke. And we've talked this in some of the other interviews, like when we talked to Emily Ensler a little bit about it. But I want to hear your perspective as well when it comes to just like the grind of these games and playing day after day. How is that? And like how do these players, what is the kind of the best ways for them to manage this when they're going through these tournament settings?
Yeah, for sure. First, shout out to MQ's fam. She's been doing great.
Yep.
She's keeping in AU right now, so I'm excited to.
She's doing her thing too.
Yeah.
Doing her thing too.
Real New York City hooper. I would say I always think that, and I say this on the broadcast every time I get in, talking about postseason. Last night I said it, like the word, the theme, the mindset has to be endurance. Like it has to be endurance, because that's exactly what you need. Like if you're looking at this bracket right now and you're saying, say you're number 6 Georgetown, you got to beat Xavier, you got to beat St. John's, and you may have to beat the winner of Creighton and whoever else in order to just get to the semifinals, right? Like it is a 4-game tournament for them. And so I just say endurance, like one, mentally thinking about having endurance within a game. Like all the time, coaches are talking postseason to me now. All these coaches calls almost sound the same. Like everyone gives their wrinkle and what they want to do, but like the mindset, what we need this time of year, like guard play has to be fantastic. Everyone says that. But also just endurance and making those in-game adjustments. And I think like mental endurance is important to like not get bogged down by the mistakes or what's happening or what referees are doing this time of year. Because who knows, March Madness happens and like whistles get swallowed or they're blown more than I've ever heard before. But anyway.
That sounds like a little personal experience right there. That sounded like some hurt.
I couldn't be a referee. I don't even know how people would want to do that. Like I'm not a rule person anyway, but to enforce rules in March is just tough. It's a tough job. But I just would say like endurance and then taking care of your body, obviously knowing that you play back-to-back games. And then I think too, that's where the coaches come in. That's where it's like, do we have to play Kelsey Ransom 39 minutes today? Can we possibly sneak in someone else who can play 4 or 5, even 2, to give someone a breather and a break? So I think it's a bit of like blending your bench, making sure that players aren't exhausted, but also that you're taking care of games and you're winning them early. But I always think of just endurance. I remember being in February and finishing up ACC play when I was at Syracuse and being like, I'm exhausted. Like all I want right now is about 3 days of sleep. And yet it's the complete opposite. It's like, all right, cool, let's go. ACC tournament is coming. We're headed to Greensboro in 2 days. We need to focus on ourselves, because that's what everyone says at this time. When you don't know who you're playing, all you do is focus on yourself. So yeah, I would say it's a gauntlet by no stretch. It's a gauntlet.
I can only imagine. That's a whole lot of games being played in a short time.
I'll add one to that, Tyler. Yeah. Also, too, scouting. I don't think we give players enough credit, but like, if you're again looking like on this schedule and you're UConn, you're sitting at the Butler Providence game, right? You're watching the game, scouting, paying attention. And then you're going back and doing film. You're looking at the scout. Maybe you've got to shoot around or walk through later. And then you're getting up the next day, probably shoot around or walk through again, probably more scout and more film. And then you're preparing for the next team. So I also just think the preparation, like we don't always focus here. Like it's not just playing games. You also have to watch things. To know who you're guarding and how you're guarding them. And people make, tons of adjustments postseason. So the Seton Hall that you saw two months ago is not the same Seton Hall that is here in March. And I think that goes for a lot of teams.
Yeah, that's interesting because I mean, you're right. Like, I don't think that I hear people talk when they think about the grind of postseason play. there's literally no time off at all between.
And I would also say, like, for a lot of these young women, like, this might be it. They do not want their basketball careers to end, right? Like, you want to keep playing as much as you possibly can because you know, this is it. And so,
y'all,
keep
listen,
fighting.
I'm emotional. Like, I'm a very happy tears person, sad tears person. So when I'm like calling the game yesterday and 14 seed and the A10 lost, and you're seeing like the one senior start to cry, I'm like, bro, this is so emotional. Like, I always joke when I was at Syracuse, like I could never do news because I couldn't be the one talking about, a fire and like 3 children, whatever.
It's all.
But I'm literally on air, like, oh my, it's the seniors' last game. Like, what are we gonna do? Like, no, they need a constellation game. Like, it is tough. We got to remember, like, people are ending their careers, this time of year. And sometimes, obviously, on terms in which sometimes they don't want to. So I do think the emotional part is tough as well.
Yeah, they said there's so much that goes into postseason play. It's part of what makes it the most exciting time of the year as well. Ice, you mentioned some of these awards earlier. I do want to get into conference awards. Literally just dropped right as we clicked record, pretty much. Paige Bueckers wins Conference Player of the Year. I would love to get y'all's thoughts on that. Do we feel like Aaliyah Edwards could have maybe made a push for that? I'm interested in hearing y'all's thoughts. Greer, I know you got some thoughts.
I do think that this was Aaliyah's award to lose. Like, I understand that Paige has won it before. But what Aaliyah did, UConn has Ice Brady, but she played sparingly, still, and they're still bringing her along. So to hold down the fort, hold down the post for Connecticut game after game in the Big East, she was a double machine in conference play. Super efficient as well, right? Like, it's not like she was shooting under 50%. I just think that Aaliyah took her game to another level during conference play this year, and I thought voters, and I don't know if that's coaches and media, I'm not really sure what the voting pool looks like, but I think that she should have been rewarded for her hard work, consistency, and just overall performance this year in Big East play.
Just to clarify, major awards and all Big East teams were selected by a vote of the league's head coaches that were not allowed to vote for their own players. Yeah, that's normal. But yes. Greer, I hear you. I think I definitely agree with the season that Aaliyah Edwards had, especially knowing the injuries that UConn had. They still had guards to play. Like we know Ashlyn Shade, right, won Rookie of the Year. KK Arnold, I think, was a 5-time Rookie of the Week selection. Obviously Paige Player of the Year. So they had guards. Nika, right? They had guards, but they lost a ton of front court players. And so I agree with you. I think when you kind of look at not just the numbers, but how the season looked, and you were there like firsthand, I could understand you wanting to give her the nod. I think my issue with always like awards is, what do you give someone that missed out on an award that still deserves recognition? Like, you can give them all Big East first team, but like, we knew she was going to get that regardless. It makes me think of Alyssa Thomas not getting voted MVP, which like just shouldn't have happened in the universe of universes. But like, it makes me think of that, like she kind of deserved that. What I tell you, what I do love, Tyler, in terms of the awards, is I actually do like the co-defensive player of the year. I do like that they honored a guard and a post player. I think Christina Dulce and then Kelsey Ransom. We have talked about Dulce a little bit, but it's really her shot blocking ability and her rebounding ability. That she can have 10 plus rebounds any given day. And I thought for the success that Villanova experienced this year, finishing the 4 seed, mind you, this is the team where last year all we talked about was Maddie Siegrist. And when Maddie Siegrist graduated, all we talked about was what's going to happen with Villanova. Like, we didn't think they were going to be anywhere in the conversation. And then Lucy Olson and Christina Dulce, proved us wrong. And so I think that award also became because her team experienced good success. So I do think that the voters got it right there.
Yeah. Well, Ice, we appreciate you so much for coming and joining the No Cap Space. Open invite. Whenever you cover down near everything in the game. So I'm sure we can figure something else out. It's always an open invite. And thank you so much for joining. And we can't wait to watch all your coverage across the board throughout conference tournaments and everything.
Thank you guys so much for having me. Thank you so much for just how you're covering the game. It's important. We need more voices. And I will come back. I'll be back in a couple of weeks. We can talk Summer League, A10, anything you want.
There we go. I'm with it, Ice. All right, make sure that you guys stay tapped in. So when the next time Ice comes on, you get notified by it. Substack, YouTube, Playback, Twitter, we're everywhere covering women's basketball all across the board. WNBA, college. Make sure you stay tapped in to the No Cap Space.